Morning, everybody. My name is Sean, and I'm going to be presenting on liability and insurance today. If you want to follow along, mine is the presentation that's like the odd one out, so it's on page 34 in your little booklet thing. Okay, so one of the things that I want to encourage you to do today is to worry a little bit, but not too much. So I'm just going to do a very brief guide to liability, insurance, and risk management for food enterprises. And before I start into the meat of the presentation, I just want to talk about what I'm going to cover. So I'll present a little bit on the different types of insurance and what they do, talk about how you can save money, and then talk about what you can do to manage risk to sort of reduce your need for insurance. So the first question you might have is like, why worry at all? This picture is based on my own kitchen. But you might be thinking like, I'm not planning to cook in a kitchen with like, rodents and bugs and electrical hazards and small bears. So, and I'm a safe cook, so, do I really need to worry? And the answer to that question is yes. Just because, accidents happen, and when they do happen, you can get sued, and it's really important to be protected and make sure that, if you do get sued, you don't lose everything that you've worked to build. So once you've realized that you need insurance, the next question is to ask, like, what kind of insurance you need. And there's a bunch of questions that you can ask as part of that. So for example, will you rent or own a building? Will you interact with the public? What kind of food will you sell? Will you use a vehicle? And will you have employees? And the answer to each one of those questions is going to determine what kind of insurance you choose. So the first one I'm going to talk about today is property insurance. And basically, if you own a building, property insurance will cover you in the event of fire, flood, theft, vandalism, or any other disastrous event that occurs. If you rent, it can also help you out because if you've made any improvements to the building or if you own expensive equipment in the building and that equipment is lost or damaged, property insurance will cover you, lost, damaged, or stolen. The next type of insurance is commercial general liability insurance, which is also known as slip and fall insurance because it's often the one that covers accidents. So it covers accidental injuries, food poisoning, and damage to the property of others. And one thing that's actually not included on this slide is that there's special kinds of commercial liability insurance for restaurants specifically, and they'll cover other things as well, like food spoilage. So if your power goes out and you lose everything in your fridge, there's special insurance that will cover that, which could be really important. And this is a really important type of insurance to have if the public is going to be visiting your business at all. So if you have a storefront, a restaurant, a market stall, or a food truck, this is the type of insurance you really want to have. The next type of insurance to consider is product liability insurance. So if you're not going to be interacting directly with the public, but you might be selling your food over the internet or over the mail or putting it into grocery stores, this is a type of insurance that will cover you in the case of like accidental food poisoning or allergic reactions or anything like that. I'm going to hold questions today, yeah. The next type is vehicle insurance, which is something you're all familiar with. So this just covers you in case anything happens while you or your employees or your volunteers are driving your car or a car for your business. One way to get out of this is if you have an independent contractor who has their own vehicle and their own insurance doing your delivery or doing whatever driving you have to do, they'll be covered and you don't have to have your own coverage. And the final kind is workers' compensation insurance, which is something that you need if you have any employees at all. This covers them in the event of injury on the job. So you need to provide this for your employees and you can't make them pay for it. You don't need to have it for volunteers, but you can include them on your policy if you want to. So this might seem like it's going to cost a lot of money, like a big pile of cash. And so the next question is like, how can you save money? How can you reduce that size of that pile? So that's where this comes in. So there's a couple ways. One is to try to balance the risks and costs and decide how much insurance you really need. So for example, if you have, say, $50,000 worth of property, you probably don't need $1 million property insurance policy. You can have a smaller one. So really think about that. Next thing is to shop around and reach out to other similar businesses for advice on what they did, because they've been there before, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So they can tell you not only what kind of insurance they needed, but also how much it cost, and maybe even who you could go to get a good deal. If you're a nonprofit, you might be eligible for special rates. There are insurance companies that deal specifically with nonprofits. If you do certain things to show that you're a safe employer or a safe business, like have your employees do food safety training, that can reduce your rates. And then also you can reassess your needs as your business grows and changes, because what you need one year may not be what you need the next year. The final thing I'm going to cover is managing risks. So there's a few things you can do. You can ask your volunteers to sign a liability waiver saying that you are not responsible if anything happens. You can form a limited liability company or other entity to protect your assets, like Sue Shield talked about. And then the final thing to do is just to be safe, as safe as you can be. So in conclusion, you really, really, really need insurance, really. But you probably don't need to buy all of it, and there's all sorts of stuff that you can do to save money and manage risk.